A mother's love knows no bounds, but when the one person she trusts most becomes the source of her child's fear, will she be able to protect her daughter before it's too late? With a chilling revelation about her father-in-law's behavior and her daughter's growing terror, Lucy must decide: fight back or risk losing everything. In this heart-stopping continuation, the battle for Ella's safety becomes a war that Lucy can't afford to lose. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm, golden light across the room. Lucy hummed quietly to herself as she chopped vegetables for dinner, her 3-year-old daughter Ella playing happily nearby. Ella's laughter echoed through the house, her bright smile lighting up the space as she dragged her blonde-haired doll behind her, lost in her own world of imagination. But then, the tranquility of the moment was shattered. A cold, stern voice cut through the air from the doorway. "Ella, come here. Now." It was Don Edward, her father-in-law, his presence looming like a dark cloud in the room, his gaze, sharp and unyielding, fixed on Ella with an intensity that made the little girl freeze. Her playful energy disappeared in an instant, replaced by fear. Ella's wide eyes filled with terror as she backed away from him, clutching her doll tightly. "Mom, Mom," she cried, her voice trembling. Lucy's heart skipped a beat. She wiped her hands on her apron and rushed to the doorway, a forced smile on her face, though inside anxiety churned. She couldn't let her father-in-law see her worry. "Oh, Father, you're here. Would you like some tea?" Lucy asked, trying to mask the tension in her voice. "No need," Don Edward replied gruffly, his cold eyes still on Ella. "I'm here to see if the girl has made any progress. Children like her need strict discipline, no room for softness. She'll be spoiled if we let her get away with this behavior." Lucy glanced down at Ella, who was trembling beside her. The girl's eyes were red, her small body shaking. A knot formed in Lucy's stomach. "Ella, go greet your grandfather," Lucy said gently, trying to soften the tension, though her heart ached for her daughter. But Ella shook her head vigorously, tears streaming down her face. "No, I don't want to," she cried, and without another word, she ran to her father, Samuel, who had just emerged from his study. "What's going on?" Samuel asked, his voice filled with concern as he looked from his wife to his father. "She's got no manners at all," Don Edward snapped, his voice filled with disapproval. "She needs to be taught discipline." Samuel looked at his daughter, her tear-streaked face filled with fear. "Father, she's just a child. Maybe she needs more time to warm up to you," he said, trying to defuse the situation. "You're being too soft, Samuel," Don Edward said sharply. "Back in my day, we didn't coddle children. They learned respect or they suffered the consequences." Lucy's stomach churned. Her father-in-law's words were like daggers to her heart, each one deeper than the last. She didn't dare speak up, but the resentment was building inside her. She lifted Ella into her arms, trying to soothe her as she carried her upstairs. "It's okay, sweetheart, you don't have to listen to Grandpa," she whispered, though doubt lingered in her mind. What was really happening? Was Don Edward hurting her daughter in ways she hadn't seen? Upstairs, Ella clung to her mother tightly. "Grandpa hurt me," she whispered, her tiny hands gripping Lucy's shirt. Lucy froze. "What do you mean, sweetie?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ella pulled her hand away from her mother's grip and held it up. It was red and bruised, faint marks still visible from where Don Edward's hand had gripped her too tightly. Lucy's heart stopped. "Did he do this to you?" Ella shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't want to go near him," she whimpered. Lucy's blood ran cold. Had Don Edward really hurt her? The thought was too horrifying to comprehend, but the marks on Ella's hand couldn't be ignored. Downstairs, Samuel tried to reason with his father, but the words felt empty in the face of his father's unyielding authority. "He's always been strict, Samuel," Lucy said quietly later that evening, her voice shaking as she shared Ella's words with her husband. "But this feels different. I don't know what's going on, but I can't ignore it anymore." Samuel's face darkened, the memories of his own childhood pain surfacing in his mind, the long nights of discipline, The harsh punishments for minor mistakes and the feeling of having his freedom stripped away under his father's rigid rules. "I don't want Ella to go through what I did," Samuel muttered, his voice filled with a quiet, painful resolve. Lucy placed a hand on his arm. "We need to protect her, Samuel, whatever it takes." That night, as Ella finally fell asleep in her mother's arms, her body jerking in restless nightmares, Lucy knew she couldn't remain silent any longer. Something was wrong and she had to find out what it was before it was too late. After the confrontation, Lucy knew her fight to protect Ella had only just begun. Don Edward's presence in their home continued to loom, but Samuel stood by her side. The next day, as Don Edward arrived, his usual stern gaze fell on Ella, who trembled in her mother's arms. "Ella, greet your grandfather," he commanded. Lucy knelt down to her daughter, her voice gentle. "It's okay, sweetie. You don't have to go to him." Samuel stepped forward, his voice firm. "Father, enough. I won't let you treat Ella the way you treated me. She deserves love, not fear." Don Edward's face twisted with anger, but for the first time he said nothing. Samuel's words had struck a chord. The tension between father and son was palpable, but Samuel stood firm. Later that night, as Lucy tucked Ella into bed, her heart swelled with resolve. She would protect her daughter at all costs. This was just the beginning, but Lucy was ready to fight for Ella's safety, no matter the cost.